أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين روحي وأرواحنا لترى بمقدمه الفداء فقد قال الله في كتابه المجيد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ألم يأن للذين آمنوا أن تخشع قلوبهم لذكر الله وما نزل من الحق صدق الله العلي العظيم For the hastening of the reappearance of our Imam, please recite aloud our salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And so that we are the first to greet the Imam upon his return, the ones who respond to his call without needing to hear his call, please recite the loudest of salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. What we've been discussing in the past couple of nights was the intellect and the faculties of the intellect and the ability of the intellect to transform our lives. We see that by becoming aware of something, of reality, in a real way we change, we become different. And this is something, we talked about the pleasures and layers of pleasures in different ways. We can sense this as well in the way of getting to know things. When we become aware of something, we sense a level of pleasure. It's something that pleases us, that we now know something that we previously didn't. But that level of pleasure that we have upon acquiring that knowledge relates and is proportional to how important we feel that knowledge is. If it's something that's utterly meaningless to us and has no relevance to our lives, then even if we might have at some level happiness of knowing something new, it's quite insignificant and we can ignore it quite easily. But when it's something deep and impactful on our lives, then it's something that we immediately sense a difference within ourselves. And this is something that has nothing to do with religion as a concept. It's something we can sense whether we believe in religion or not. It's something that holds true. Now, this idea of knowledge providing a way to gain access to reality and therefore changing our lives, it's something that we see, there's something that holds us back in a way from that really happening. And that's the persistent illusion and delusion of this world that we've mentioned time and again. That this world seems to us to be the real thing, the thing that has all of that which actually benefits us. And the next world seems as if it's the abstract, the vague thing. Perhaps we don't really believe in it. Perhaps if we believe in it, it's just something so far off. And because of that, we can't really truly encapsulate within ourselves the concept that the next world is the real world. That that's where everything I should be aiming for should be oriented. But nowadays we see even a further degree of separation. Right? If that wasn't already hard enough to remove ourselves from the material and reach our true self of the intellect and the next life, we now find ourselves faced with another degree of separation from even this material world. And that's sinking into this sort of metaverse, this artificial world that we build within our devices, within social medias, within all of these things. Again, I'm not saying that these are things that we need to avoid necessarily, or that there are something that are inherently bad or anything like that. But we should be cognizant of the effect that it has on us. Right? If we sink in all of our efforts, all of our attention into relationships and actions and interactions that are all within this false metaverse world, then that's another degree of separation that pulls me away from even this material world. And you'll see it, right? And you'll see it even, the rate of change is scary when you think about it, right? I'm sure people, of my age remember their own youth, that when they were young, when they were kids, there was no devices, right? You didn't have handheld devices at that time. And you had game consoles, so you might have played that. But other than that, if you wanted to have fun, if you wanted to hang out with, friends, you went outside, right? You actually had to interact with them. You had to meet them, right? And it's probably my generation that slowly saw this within their own lifespan change very drastically, right? As they're going through school, found it immediately changing from almost 1 year after another. There's a new thing coming out, new thing, and dramatically changing how our interactions happened. You might say that, okay, what's the problem? Why can't I have, friends online? I have meaningful relationships like that. It's just as real as anything that's in person. Why can't that be the case? But it's not, right? I'll just put it as a blunt claim. It's not the same, right? The depth of emotion, of friendship, of link and relationship that you can have with someone that's online at a separation without being able to really interact in their lives, not at a time where I can just click a button and end that relationship and sort of say that, okay, I'm going to talk to someone else. No, I have to be in front of them. It has its own restrictions if I'm in front of someone. I can't escape it. I can't just run away. Technically I could run away, but inshallah we wouldn't run away. That builds us in a different way. It forces us to deal with each other in a more meaningful manner. Think about yourself. If you're friends with someone who's online, and that's my only interaction with this brother is online, and I believe to be friends and things. He says something I don't like, I turn off my computer. I turn off my phone. I put it on do not disturb mode. Now what? The person doesn't even know where I live, right? Doesn't even know my phone number, probably. He can't contact me if I don't want him to. Doesn't have any ability to access me. Can't interact with me. Can't do anything with my life. That's not how it's supposed to be. Right? Why am I dictating that? And so you see, this is something that we are suffering from, right? Not the existence of it itself, right? Again, I'm emphasizing that it's a tool, and tools can be used in either positive ways or negative ways. But the way that it is right now, there's a lot of negatives that are about it. And most of them are because we're not doing it mindfully. We seek it as oblivion, to be mindless of everything else. And this is something that, it happened in other ways previously, but the ability of these tools to sort of distract our minds and make ourselves obsessed with the things that really don't matter is much more than the previous tools that existed. So you have to be cognizant of this. You have to be aware of it and find a way to balance things. Find a way to move things in a way that matters. Right? Imagine this. If you think that all things are equal, right? Whether it's virtual or in person, imagine this exact majlis. Except instead of this majlis and everyone being gathered over here in front of me, I'm sitting in front of a screen, and each one of you are sitting in front of your own screens. Would it feel in any way the same as it feels right now? Right, speech, okay. Speech isn't that great anyway. But the other parts, what about the noha? You're going to have a reciter say a noha, and then you're going to be doing some matam, and then probably barely, sometimes you barely hear the chorus of things in person. Think you're going to hear the chorus of things when everyone's online? No, everyone's going to be muted. Nobody's going to be saying anything. Half of the people aren't even watching, right? They've already turned to something else. Let's not fool ourselves and think that everything is equal. It's not. It's different. The relationships that we have in person are much more meaningful and impactful. Right? Now, relationships are one thing. It's something beyond that is even more concerning. It's how we perceive reality, how we perceive what is actually real. And this is something perhaps, we don't have any statistics, don't have any sort of way to analyze this at the moment. But perhaps we can sort of sense a danger in this increasing trend, which is that maybe it might come to the state where we see and perceive whatever world we build within this metaverse and these internet connections and websites and all of these apps and things that we have to be the actual real thing that matters beyond even the material world, let alone an immaterial akhirah. And if that happens, well, I mean, you want to sort of have some sort of fantasy land to go to, it's a click of the button. Why do I need to wait for paradise? I can just, click it and then I'll be there. It's a very heavy danger, right? And again, I'm not trying to paint a dystopian society where everything happens like that, but to be honest, it's not that far-fetched. It's not. It's really not that far-fetched to happen. Right? So at the very least, ignoring all of the sort of, if you want to say the conspiracy theory, the person who doesn't have any social media is telling you about social media. Ignoring all of that. At the very least, it's something to be concerned about, right? Should at least look at it, analyze it, let's see the effect of things on our own lives. Want to test it? For a couple of days, cut it out of your life. Is it that crucial? Cut it out of your life for a couple of days. Try it. Right? Have a, what do they call it? A social media cleanse or something. Right? Try it. And I promise you, it'll change how you perceive the world. If you let it, right? Obviously we can stop ourselves from doing it. We could, like how different people are fasting, right? There's some people who are fasting who, what they do is, as soon as it gets to Fajr time, inshallah, they're awake for Fajr, but as soon as it gets to that, they sleep, right? They pray Fajr, then they sleep. They try to sleep as long as they can. As soon as it gets to Maghrib, then they're good to go, right? You can eat. And that was their fasting. Right? So don't do that when you're if you're trying to try this. Don't, be in a miserable state, laying down in your bed in a state of depression. No, push yourself to do something. But inshallah, you'll see a difference. Now, the verse that I recited at the very beginning says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ألم يأن للذين آمنوا أن تخشع قلوبهم لذكر الله وما نزل من الحق. It says that, has it not come time for the ones who have iman, for the ones who have faith, for their hearts to tremble, to become humble before the remembrance of their Lord and that which has been revealed from the truth. Now there's a very strange thing that happens in this beginning of this ayah. It's not addressing the kuffar. It's not addressing the people who disbelieve. Right? It's addressing you and I, inshallah. The ones who have iman. Has it not come time for the ones who have iman, for their hearts to become humble? Right? So we can't go home and pat ourselves on the back and say, yes, I'm the ones who have iman. Well, no, the Quran is addressing us. It's telling us. This is something that we have difficulty with. Seeing beyond the ego and the I to attach ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to that which is real. And we see this in various ways, right? The very, very obvious way, the extreme way, very, very overt way is what we see in, for example, in the story of Shaitan, right? The Shaitan has arrogance, he has an ego. This is I can't handle bowing down in front of Adam. I can't handle that being something that I'm actually supposed to be doing. And so I reject Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's right to tell me what to do. Right? That's what Shaitan does. And that's very, very overt. Very, very apparent. Inshallah, we don't have that within our lives. Inshallah, we don't have that as something that is going to be, very apparent in our lives. And if it is, then we know what we need to do and fix. It's very apparent. But a lot of times it's much more subtle than that. It's a lot more hard to pick out within our own lives. Hard to distinguish that it's actually our ego that's determining that. Think about it in this way. When I go and suffer difficulties, that's usually when a lot of us turn towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and pray. Especially if we have no material thing that we find reasonable to solve our solution, like solve our problem. Right? If it's a sickness that seemingly has no cure, it's some sort of financial problem that we don't have any opportunities seemingly around us to fix, that's usually the time when we have the most intense du'as. Right? We ask everyone to do dua for us. We ask everyone. We ourselves are praying the most. It's usually that's when it happens. But you know what it's almost like? It's almost like I'm telling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hey, I'm doing this for you, so you've got to do me a favor too, right? I'm almost like a transaction. That I'm doing this, so you do me a favor by giving me rizq, by giving me whatever I want, by making me healthy, etc., etc. That's not how it works. As I mentioned last time, we don't have anything at all upon which we can say that I deserve this from God. Everything that we have, every single thing that we have is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our abilities are from Allah. Our thoughts are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every breath that we have is granted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If that's the case, how can I have something and say that I deserve something from Allah? No. Doesn't mean not to pray. No. These times of trials and tribulations in a certain way are a big blessing, by means of which we can gain a heightened attention and attachment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that doesn't mean that I can now dictate the terms and say, oh Allah, I'm doing this, I'm scratching your back, you have to scratch my back. That's not how it works. I can't do that. Another more subtle way than even that. Right? A lot of times we look, and this is something natural, we look at everything within our lives from the lens and perspective of ourselves. Right? These are my relationships, these are my feelings, these are my thoughts, these are my actions, these are my trials and hardships, I. I'm seeing it always through the lens of myself. And this is something very difficult to go beyond. It's maybe a lifelong struggle for inshallah, some of us inshallah to reach the state where we can go beyond that. But we perceive this persistent delusion and illusion that I am the real thing. I am the one whom the universe rotates around. It's not me, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Truly seeing that is difficult. Right? To be able to see at every breath and every moment that everything is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything is from Him. That's difficult. Right? That requires a severe amount of cutting of the ego. And definitely, that's a lifelong struggle. Again, we should remind ourselves, Islam is never 100% or zero. It's never black or white. It's a gradient. There's levels on our journey. Right? And so we shouldn't take any to say that, okay, that seems impossible, and so it's useless. No. Right? There's a metaphor, I don't know if Shaykh Hussain Mushtadi mentioned this before, but it might have mentioned it because it comes from the same inspiration in which he's basing these tafsir points. But there's a metaphor like this, that sometimes we think about the world like this, and our path forward like this, that I want to reach heaven, and I'm in the middle of a desert. I know it's supposed to be in like that direction. I know it's supposed to go north, for example. But it's the middle of the night, complete darkness. I only have a lantern that sheds maybe light a few meters in front of me. Now, one person might say that, well, how can I go forward? How can I go and reach heaven if I can only see 5 meters in front of me? I can't do anything. Right? Sometimes that's how we see it, right? We want all of the answers. Every single thing should be made completely clear to me about everything, and then I'll take the first step. Doesn't make sense. It's not intelligent at all. Right? If I had a destination, even if it's in the middle of the dark, if I have a lantern that can tell me, at least a few meters in front of me, and I know what direction I'm supposed to take, well then if I take a few steps, then it'll lighten a few more steps in front of me. And I can keep on going. The path right in front of me is clear. So that shouldn't be something, this idea that everything has to be made sense to me, everything about my whole world and my journey and everything else. No, it's not about me. The whole journey is to let go of the me, the I. Please say Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now, we had mentioned this hadith of the armies of the intellect and the ignorance, and how one of the armies of the intellect is thanking and being thankful. Now, to be properly thankful for anything, you first have to recognize what you're being thankful for, right? If we don't know that someone has done us a favor, then we wouldn't know to thank them. And so both, in that small statement, we see that there's two factors. One, what was given to us, what favor was given to us, and two, who gave it to us. Both of those are very crucial factors in order for us to do proper things for anything. And so within our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we want to increase our attention and the thanks that we give to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, well, very clearly we have to increase our attention and awareness of what we've been given, the favors and the benefits that we have within this life. We have to increase our attention to who gave it to us, ultimately. Sure, there are plenty of things around us and we should be thanking the means by which all of these favors reached us. But ultimately, everything is sourced from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, within this thanking is another way, a hidden way for us to break our egos. Because the more we pay attention to the favors that we have, the more insignificant we realize we truly are. And this is something that's very contrary to many sort of modern ways of psychology and psychotherapy and ways of looking at the human psyche. The sort of impression that we should be increasing our own feeling of importance and the realization that, my life matters, my choices, No. Islam doesn't say that. Now, if we look at these blessings that we've been granted and all of the things that we should be giving, there's again layers of things that correlate to the layers of our understanding of these blessings that we've been given. If I see the world in the way that, okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is like the clockmaker and this whole universe is like a clock, and He just set it into motion and then everything is just happening. Right? Then the amount of thanks and gratitude I'll have for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be limited. Yes, I'm grateful that He started the clock, so to speak, made the clock. But it's a great degree of separation. There's so many intermediaries between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that's a completely, utterly false image. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not the clockmaker. He's giving us and supporting us moment by moment. Every moment of our life is a grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being given by Him. And so every moment that I draw breath is a relationship that I've built between myself and my Lord. For lack of a better word. Technically, I'm not building it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has built between Himself and me. He's given me existence moment by moment by moment. What does that mean for thinking? There's another hadith by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Where he mentions that the ultimate of thanks, of giving thanks, is for one to realize by the utter depths of their heart that they're unable to give thanks for the slightest thing. He explains why. says as soon as you say thanks and say shukran lillah for a blessing, then you realize that the ability that you were given to give thanks was also given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That realization that you had to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was also given by Allah. The ability of your tongue to move was also given by Allah. And so in that one single moment of giving thanks, there's another infinite things to give thanks for. And each one of those again have an infinite number of things to give thanks for. And a never-ending cycle. And so if I wanted to give thanks for one blessing, it's impossible, let alone the infinite that exists within my life. Again, the words are pretty, right? The words are nice to say, nice to hear. What matters is what happens after. Right? Can I really see myself like that? Understanding myself in that type of interaction between myself and my Lord, where I'm seeing it in that manner that everything is being granted by Him and therefore I need to thank Him. Now, time is running short. But there's another blessing that we've been granted that I think sometimes in almost a paradoxical way, as Muslims, we seem to be the most heedless of. And that's the blessing of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Syed salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. How much of a precious blessing this Prophet is for us. Right? We have in the Quran where it says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, Azizun alayhi ma anittum, harisun alaykum. This Prophet that Allah SWT sent among you, it distresses him, it's difficult for him to bear what hardships he sees within you in your lives. He's concerned for you. Concerned for you. The Prophet is rahmatul lil alameen, a mercy for all of the universes. Now if I want to thank the blessing that is the Prophet, how do I do that? How do I thank a blessing of that magnitude? Obviously we just mentioned, even the smallest blessing we can't thank properly. Well, what can we do? What is the extent of what we can do? The Prophet said it. He said, I don't ask of you any ajr, any reward, illa muwaddata fil qurba, except for having love for my close ones. How do we express love? Love is something that brings people to one common thing. It binds people together. People become similar. You see it happen all the time, right? Even in relationships that are the smallest manifestation of love, right? Friends, when they get together and they become friends, they start to speak like each other. They start to act like each other. They adopt each other's attitudes and customs. Something happens almost automatically. Eventually what happens is that they adopt each other's goals and mindsets as well. They become concerned for the same things, attached to the same things, detached from the same things. What about me and the Ahlul Bayt? If I have love for them, it should be the same. I should be attached to the same things that they're attached to. And I should be severed from the same things that they stayed away from. We say it time and time again, the Imams, they're the ma'asumeen, right? They never sinned. Just picture that within this context then. That means every single sin that I take is pushing me away from my Imam. In reality, I'm becoming someone who the Imam would not recognize as his follower. everything that I do has to be aligned in that same way. And yes, again, I'm not saying that we should expect ourselves from day one to be ma'soom. But you know what is an actual goal? We should be aiming, all of us, to become ma'soom within this world. I don't know when this concept became a concept that we thought that isma and perfection in terms of not committing a sin is something that's only for the imams. No. Yes, there's different types of isma, and theirs is of a different type than what we talk about with regards to what's attainable for ourselves. But the idea that we should not be committing a single sin is what we're actually supposed to be doing. That's not something unattainable. But it's almost, especially living in this society, surrounded by what we're surrounded with, that we've convinced ourselves that some sins are unavoidable. You tell someone that lying is a major sin. Like, no, that can't be. Like, right? I'll just do tawbah. No. Why are we setting ourselves up for failure? Let's aim for what's real, the ideal. Yes, it's a struggle, a lifelong struggle. I'm not saying that's easy. But that's what the goal is. If we want to live and die like the imams, that's what the goal is. It's not easy. No one said it was going to be easy. But it's worth it? Yeah, as mentioned. If you're aware of reality, then the worth becomes apparent. Inshallah, we can spend a few moments remembering the musibah of Aba Abdullah Hussein alayhi salam. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Dear brothers and sisters, over the last few nights we've talked about some of the companions of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. But we know that a time comes when all of the companions of Aba Abdullah have become martyred, and the time approaches for the Bani Hashim to approach the battlefield. The ones who we want to commemorate today are Aoun and Muhammad, the sons of Abdullah ibn Ja'far ibn Abi Talib. Now, Aoun and Muhammad did not start their journey with the caravan of Imam Hussein al-Islam. Rather, they were later sent nearing the time when Imam Hussein al-Islam was leaving Mecca, sent as the representatives of their father, and later on told by their father to go and defend Imam Hussein al-Islam wherever he takes them. Now, we don't know. There is a bit of doubt historically on whether Hazrat Zainab was actually the mother of both of them or not. But regardless, she was definitely the one who was caring for them, was looking after them, was with them for this journey. And we can imagine what the heart of a mother would go through the night before she sends her children, her sons, into certain death. But the concern of Hazrat Zainab was not for her children, it was for Aba Abdullah al-Hussein and his mission. We see on the day of Ashura, that Hazrat Aun was perhaps the third of the Bani Hashim that goes into the battlefield. He goes and fights valiantly until he becomes martyred. And the same occurs with his brother Muhammad. According to some narrations, a curious thing happens. For every other shahada that happened, it's narrated that Hazrat Zainab would run out from the tents and would console Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. But some narrations mention that in the martyrdom of Aun and Muhammad, Hazrat Zainab stayed in her tent. Why would a mother do that? Perhaps she didn't want Abu Abdullah al-Hussein to be ashamed and embarrassed upon seeing her. But this is not the end of the trials that face Hazrat Zainab. We talk often about what happens in Karbala, what happens in Sham. But do we really picture that there are on spears heads of the children of Zainab in front of her? That as she's speaking to Yazid in his court, that she can see the heads of her children on spears, and still at that moment she says, "Ma ra'aytu illa jamila." على لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. ماتم حسين.